Lalo Salamanca came up to the north after his uncle Hector suffered from a stroke which left him paralyzed and in need of someone to take care of the business. Though a relatively small character and a very late introduction, Lalo has dominated every scene he's been in with his mischievous yet genius character. He really is Gus's main threat, as Lalo is not only just as smart, but also quite charming, which makes it easy for him to manipulate situations and people. But really, who even is Lalo? Well, starting off, the first question that arises is whether or not Lalo is even a real Salamanca. Many rumors suggest that Lalo simply started off as a mercenary who worked his way up in the hierarchy and eventually became an honorary Salamanca. However, there's really no proof of this within the show itself, at least not up until the end of season 5. So, for the purposes of this video, we'll just say Lalo is indeed a real Salamanca. Taking a step back and looking at the entire family tree, the person up at the top is good old Abuelita. It seems like she had 4 children, 3 of which are unknown, and 1 being Hector. We don't know who Hector's son or daughter is, but we do know that Tuco, Lalo, and Marco and Leonel are part of this generation, as we know that they are all cousins and nephews of Hector. Finally, though we don't know who Hector's offspring is, we do know his grandson is Joaquin, as Gus reveals that the last Salamanca, aside from Hector, was his grandson Joaquin and that he was killed as well. Even though we don't know who the missing members of the family tree are, it's likely that they were also involved in the cartel, as their sons are involved as well. Plus, Hector often expresses entitlement as he believes his family is the sole reason for the cartel's success, as he declares the cartel is Salamanca money, Salamanca blood. So it's likely that all of these members were killed while building up the cartel. Considering this, it seems like the Salamancas took care of all the dirty work, while Juan Bolsa and Don Eladio simply handled diplomatic relationships and business dealings with Colombians and such. Furthermore, we know that Marco, Leonel, and Lalo live south of the border, while Hector and Tuco live in Albuquerque. As a result, it's likely that Hector and Tuco's father were in charge of receiving and distributing the product in the north. Meanwhile, the cousin's father as well as Lalo's father were in charge of picking up the product from the Colombians, loading up the trucks, and sending it up north. And as Salamancas died off, their sons took over the role in the operation. This means that the Salamancas were taking on the bulk of the risk, and that 3 of Hector's brothers were killed running the cartel. No wonder Hector feels like he owns the cartel. Anyways, with all of this information, we can conclude that Lalo and the cousins are in charge of distribution in the south. As for how long Lalo has been in the business, in the Don Eladio video, we figured out that the cartel was likely started in around 1980. We know that Hector's grandson Joaquin was an adult himself, likely in his late 20s or early 30s. Even with the generational gap of just 20 years, this means that Lalo would have been in his late 40s or early 50s if he was alive when Gus took revenge on the cartel. This means that he was 40 to 45 years old during the early 2000s Better Call Saul days. This also means that he was already an adult aged 18 to 22 around the time the cartel was started. So he was likely involved from the start of the cartel and has spent his entire adult life working for the cartel, starting off by assisting his father and eventually taking over distribution in the south along with his cousins after his death. So that's roughly Lalo's history as well as his role within the cartel. But given his deep servitude within the organization, this brings up the classic question: how much money did Lalo Salamanca make? Well, to answer that, we have to first take a look at how the Salamancas handled their money. Though a lot of the Salamancas are psychotic and or spiteful, one thing they value above everything else is family and respect. And so, it's likely that they believe that the money each member makes is a family's money as opposed to each individual share. Looking at the huge vault of money in Season 5, Episode 8, it seems like the Salamancas simply store all of their money in such places and withdraw from there whenever a Salamanca needs it. So, to estimate Lalo's share, we simply have to take a look at the total money the Salamanca family has made and divide it by the number of living Salamancas. To figure out the Salamanca's share out of the total revenue, we'll take a look at the ratios we established in the How Much Does Gus Fring Make video. In that video, we established that the cartel gets 30%, mules get 20%, dealers get 20%, right-hand men like Mike, Tyrus, and Victor get 10%, and finally, Gus gets 20%. Now, a lot of you guys commented that Gus doesn't use mules as he built up his own distribution network. To clarify, what I meant by mules in that video are the people working Gus's distribution network, like the guys driving the Los Pollos Hermanos trucks and packaging up their product. Just because he built up his own network doesn't mean that it's free. However, it is likely that he has more control over them and that it's cheaper, but we stuck with the 20% mule price in that video to keep Gus's earnings conservative. Applying these same ratios to the Salamanca's business, the same 30% would go to the cartel, or basically Don Eladio and the manufacturers. As for mules, the Salamancas don't need as many mules as Gus because they don't do dead drops. Gus needs mules to transport to the north and mules to distribute it to dealers in the north. The Salamancas, however, straight up deal with the dealers in the ice cream shop, so they only need the mules that transport up to the north. As a result, we'll assume this costs the Salamancas half of what it would cost Gus at 10%. The dealers would get the same 20%, and right-hand men like Nacho and all the ones in Mexico would also likely get the same 10%. So the Salamancas are roughly left with 30% of the total revenue. To calculate the total revenue, we'll use the numbers that we determined in the Don Eladio video. If you guys are interested in how exactly these numbers were determined, then make sure to check out the video. But essentially, we analyzed how many packages of cocaine Gus was shipping and how much money he was able to give Don Eladio to approximate the total revenue each month. Gus was able to give Don Eladio $1.8 million per month using 12 package shipments. So with the Salamancas likely 5 package shipments, which we determined based on how much Gus thought Hector should get, they were able to pull in approximately $750,000 per month for Don Eladio. We already determined that Don Eladio's share as well as the Salamanca share are both 30%. So $750,000 is how much the Salamancas were roughly profiting per month up until mid-2004, which is where Season 5 of Better Call Saul ends. Between 1980 and 2004, this adds up to a total of $216 million. After this, the Salamanca business basically falls apart because Nacho runs away, Lalo has to lay low in Mexico, and Tuco is in jail. Eventually, Tuco does take over the business up north dealing with meth, but that didn't last very long. Plus, Tuco was very impressed with Walter being able to produce just 4 pounds per week, so I don't think he was dealing very much anyways. Even assuming that Tuco moved 5 pounds per week of street-grade meth at $1,700 per ounce, and assuming that Tuco took control right after Lalo left in mid-2004 all the way up to his death in late 2008, the Salamanca's 30% cut would only be $9.5 million, and that's with the best case scenario. It's likely that Tuco was actually in jail for a few years after Lalo left, and that they weren't pulling in any revenue for a bit of time. So if anything, the Salamancas profited a couple million during that time, pulling up their total profit to about $220 million in the drug business. Subtracting $20 million for any issues, the Salamancas made approximately $200 million. Assuming that the 6 family members that we know of are the only ones that are still alive, Lalo would be worth about $33 million, or conservatively $25 to $30 million. We know bail cost $7 million, but this likely didn't come out of his share of the money. As I said before, the Salamancas likely share their money. And his bail money came from everyone's share, as Lalo went to the north to save the family business. He porque familia es todo. But that's just what I think. What do you guys think about Lalo? Make sure to comment that down below. Also, if you guys like this analysis, then make sure to drop a like and consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.